states have come here.
For the first ever simulated convention of states. This is to show people it can really be done.
Left unchecked, government expands limitlessly.
We need a check and balance.
These people are tired of federal overreach.
We've been going back and forth. We've been debating amendments. We had committee hearings yesterday.
Today's the day. The winds of change are about to blow.
I can see the optimism.
It's exciting to meet legislators from across the country.
And just the electricity, the energy to discuss solutions.
It was the most extraordinary thing in my career that I've ever been a part of.
It shows a commitment to wanting to do it right.
None of us have ever seen this before, right?
That our founding fathers were in fact right yet again.
The process actually works.
The very idea that I stood where Patrick Henry, Jefferson, and the folks who came up with the genius of America.
That has renewed that vigor and excitement.
It's awesome. I came in as the me. When I looked around, I was part of the we.
Now it's time for us to be leaders among leaders.
We're going to save our nation.
Exercising our rights as states under the Constitution in an Article 5 convention.
This is what we have to do.
You have proven that the people of the United States are ready to hold the first Article 5 convention in the history of this country.
That it's a far greater risk for us to do nothing.
Clearly, we can do this.
Probably our last best hope of preserving liberty for the next generation.
Freedom is what's at stake. Self-government and freedom are the outcomes when you have limited power.
What could be more important than to do something like this?
We have a chance to do something extraordinary.
Thank you for being here, and let's get to work.
If the government ever becomes a tyranny, we're going to give you this gift. You get a chance to get together, get your commissioners together from all over the country and restrain that tyranny. But because it's never been done, we wanted to see it done. We want it to be tried out so people understand, how does it work? What kind of rules are there? What will be an interplay between commissioners? You know, when you're going to do something this important, it's important to practice.
Giving knowledge, information, vision, and hope. Hope that the federal government really can be curtailed and that this process really can work.
And this is the real deal. I mean, this is kind of the precursor to the real Super Bowl. Delegates, commissioners from all 50 states.
They're going to be able to go back home and talk to their fellow legislators and say, look, let me tell you exactly how it worked. I can tell you from firsthand, it can be done. It will be effective.
So I think there are people who've never even heard of it that are going to see this and be impressed. And I think that builds enthusiasm.
This is the defining moment and the last opportunity to get our republic right.
We need a solution as big as the problem.
There is nothing wrong with your screen. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling the messaging in this transmission. We will tell you the topics you may speak about. We will remove any speech we deem unfit. We will identify and protect you from all that is evil. You need only put your full trust in us. We are the government, and we are here to help.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Wednesday Night Live. So today's focus is going to be on the upcoming convention, the upcoming simulated convention, I should say. We're still at 19 nationwide as far as states that have signed on board. So, you know, we still have some more coming likely this year. So let's let the progress continue. But I can tell you, once more and more people are exposed to this, how it works, and really just how the whole process goes down, you know, this thing can snowball quickly. And it can snowball quickly because it's your state legislatures that you're dealing with. It's not your federal legislatures. And that is a huge difference. So now, you know, some may be watching and saying, hey, I don't even know, you know, sorry about that. But some of you may be watching saying, hey, I don't even know how this whole thing works anyway. And I'll get into a little bit of that. But I also want to cover some of the suggestions that came from the grassroots. So grassroots were asked by Convention of States Action, which you can check out at conventionofstates.com or Convention of States Project on YouTube. That's whose videos that I used for that intro ticker. Thank you, by the way, to them. I hope they're okay with it. But in the end, I'm kind of hyped up for it. They did one of these before. You can look into that on their website. It was a great success. And now, I believe it's 5 years later, they're doing it again, or 6 or 7 years, they're doing it again. And it's going to happen next week on Friday, August 4th. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and some of my COS folks, if you're on any of the platforms, you can just leave in the comments if I'm correct here. But I believe that it's going to go on for a few days. Friday is going to be like the day that they vote on a lot of the stuff. So it's going to be kind of like Judgment Day from the proposal standpoint. And so what's going to be going on at this simulation? Well, there are 1 to 3 delegates or commissioners that have been chosen per state to convene and go through the process under the current calling of convention. So, and here's Mike Arnold. Good, I do have some of the good folks on. Mike Arnold, who's a regional director in the Northeast, says Friday is going to be live streamed. So that's the big deal, is the live stream, because we can all participate. I would tell you, this is something that you should all be dialed in on. I don't care what position you take on what. In the end, this is a civics lesson. It's the greatest civics lesson ever taught. All right, because it's an actual demonstration of how a convention is supposed to work, and it's all based on historical context and precedent. So why is that so significant? Because we've never actually called a convention of states to amend the Constitution before, and the reason being is that in almost every case that it was about to happen, Congress has given in and done whatever the thing, including the Bill of Rights, has given in and done whatever it was that the states were asking for at that particular time. Now, it's important to understand this movement's not new. So even if you don't know about it, the movement's not new. It's been going on for a decade now. The Constitution is not an easy thing to amend, and it's been going on for a while. There are 19 states already on board. So Convention of States Project has gotten us more than halfway there already. And so, what I'm optimistic about, last year 4 more states came on. There's a lot of misinformation floating around to state legislators, which is challenging to overcome at times. But more and more and more, what we're seeing is they're doing their reading, they're doing their research, and they're not only voting in favor of afterwards, but they're going from staunch advocates against it to staunch supporters for it, because they understand how it's supposed to work and have pushed the fear aside. Now, this demonstration, to me, I'm going to be dialed in as much as I can. Of course, we're going to work, and I've been already talking with Mike Arnold, who's actually commenting now about having him on and going through some of this. I don't know if I'll be able to take the whole day off from work. I'm going to try, but, the best I can do. But as soon as I'm off, we'll be on, kind of hitting it, talking about key points, and just kind of getting a feel for what amendments, were being proposed, what amendments were passed that could be proposed. So if you're really new to the concept, I want to explain it to you, because I honestly, once I learned about this about 2 years ago, I really have turned to dedicate the channel to it. Once I learned about this, it changed me. Okay, because I realized that the major issues, okay, that we face can be tackled directly by us, that we don't have to wait for election cycles. We don't have, and even if we do, some of these existential issues that this nation faces due to the structural damage of this country cannot be fixed by a president or by a Congress. There's no one to elect to fix the things that are broken in this government. maybe you like Trump, maybe you like DeSantis, maybe you like Ramaswamy, whoever you like, they don't have the power in that office. There's no executive order that can be written, and there's no way Congress is going to pass anything that's going to do things like term limits, do things like fiscally restrain the federal government. Even the Republicans right now, and I'm never I don't care. I'm going to dig Trump for this every single time because he is the reason that McCarthy is the House Speaker right now. You look at what McCarthy's doing as a House Speaker right now and what he just agreed to with Biden. I mean, we knew he was going to do it, right? We knew he was going to do it because the Republicans are sellouts just like the freaking Democrats are. They don't care. The system's broken. They didn't cut one dime of spending. They cut future increases to spending, increases that were already deficit spending. We can fix that. We can fix that through amendment. And this is what we're going to watch on display. Obviously, it's not a real convention. It's a simulated one. And the proposed amendments, I believe, and I don't know how many of you caught my post maybe 2 weeks ago where they were giving up to July 7th, they were 3 weeks ago, they were giving grassroots the opportunity to submit proposals for amendments that grassroots wanted. And just the articulate stuff that came up, and I'm going to cover a few of them, but they were some really well thought out amendments under the topics that are at hand. So, nothing for the border, as bad an issue as that is. That's not a topic at hand right now. This current convention has 3 topics. It's term limits for all federal officials, not just elected, fiscal restraints on the federal government, and government overreach of authority. All right, so those are the 3 topics. And I'm curious if you have an amendment that you would put up there, pop it in the comments right now, and let's talk about it. I went in there and I put one of my own. I put a couple in there. There's a lot that I didn't put in there because I knew someone else would. And I'll talk about some of those, like a single subject amendment, right? So everything that gets written, any bill that gets written out of Congress can only be on one subject, and that subject needs to be in the title of the bill, right? And why is that a big deal? Why would that astronomically change the way that the government works? Because omnibus bills would be impossible. How many times have you seen Rand Paul stand up, usually to an empty chamber, because they all get up and leave because they don't want to hear what they signed. But he lists off all of the pork that's on these bills and the bizarre things that the American treasure is being spent on. One example that comes to mind are the mating rituals of quail after doing cocaine. Now, really, do you even think that they're giving quail cocaine to study their mating rituals? No. That money's being laundered somewhere, who knows where, lizards on treadmills, all of those things. If they want to give that, they have to pass a bill specifically and put their vote on it that says, I am voting to appropriate $200 million to lizards on treadmills. That's not going to be tacked on the bottom of a veterans bill where they tell you, oh, well, I voted for it, yes, but I needed to vote for it because it was in the veterans bill. And the only way to get the benefits to the veterans was to, vote for whatever was in there. Like that ends with a single subject amendment. Okay. So there's one example of the power, right? Another one, term limits. So term limits, there are a lot of interesting suggestions on term limits. Everything from, and again, this is just the grassroots. Well thought out though, but it's not necessarily what will come out of a convention, but or even it would come out of the simulated convention. But these are the things the grassroots put out there. Most of them were saying 12 years, no more than 2 terms for senators. I think it was no more than 6 years. It varies. Everyone was given different years for the House and Senate. Some had an interesting cycle that they were going through. So there's quite a few thoughtful and really cool suggestions by the grassroots. And one of the ones that I put in, was and this is a new one, I think. I didn't see it. I didn't get to. There were like 300 submissions over that. I don't know if this was duplicated or not, but I put one in that was referencing privacy. Privacy with respect to technology. I believe what I put exactly was, Here it is. No technology, current or future, shall be used for the surveillance of the citizenry at large under any circumstances. Warrants for individual surveillance may be issued by a state judge with the proper demonstration of due process and just cause. This includes camera surveillance, social media, and any unforeseen platform that would have the ability to gather information that is outside the public square. So basically, just putting a kibosh on all of this. Right away, the people that are doing artificial intelligence will need to rethink their entire strategy, because they may existing be in violation of the United States Constitution and are going to need to move shop elsewhere. This doesn't mean that we can't have surveillance equipment. It doesn't mean that we can't develop such things. It just means if that stuff is ever used on the American people, it's a problem, and it's a problem that they will have to deal with. So, that's a doc. Let me see. I got some comments flowing in, so I want to try and get to some of it. So let me know when the people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is on board. It's August 4th. August 4th is the simulation date. At conventionestates.com, you can get, and there's also links on the videos as well for the simulation. You can register and then host a watch party if you want to. I highly encourage, if you have like-minded friends who are pro-Constitution, pro-America, and all of it, if you have friends like that, this is an opportunity to really get an education in civics that you cannot get anywhere else. Most of our population today, not just the millennials and Gen Z and whatever, most of our population, including boomers, many boomers, and Gen X, do not understand correctly how this country is supposed to work. Right? In the video I dropped about one of the things that I love about Ramaswamy is that he notes this, and he noted this in that family summit, that this is not a democracy, right? We live in a constitutional republic, and most of our politicians, including Donald Trump, I haven't been able to find a clip on DeSantis, but if I look hard enough, I'm sure I will. But all of them call this a democracy, all of them. And it's just not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. And it's not acceptable because it's not true. And Tucker kind of, when Ramaswamy brought it up, right? And I don't even know if I have the clip of Ramaswamy, but like, I learned a lot about him when it came to that summit, that family summit. And I thought a lot of his responses were well thought out. I thought a lot of it was kind of overview and high level, but I think he needs to do that because nobody knows who the heck he is. So you're just going to get a feeling of his philosophy. But he was the only one out of all of them to give a good answer on Ukraine. He was the only one. DeSantis pretty much punted on that, and Trump's answer scared the living crap out of me. So when I heard Ramaswamy talk about it, he was on point. And when he said, Tucker asked him about the Constitution, about saving the democracy, and I'm trying to see if I have it here. It was just a brilliant answer. I think this is it. Let's see if I got this right.
How can you have a democracy with censorship?
So you want to know the best measure of the health of a democracy? We're a constitutional republic, but I'll use lowercase d democracy as a fill-in, right? Couldn't resist.
People always applaud at that. I love that.
It's just the truth, though, right?
No, it is true. But the civics majors love it.
Right? So they all got a laugh out of it, and even Tucker does it. Right? Even Tucker does it. And Tucker kind of took it lightly, but like, Tucker, you need to get your shit straight too. But like that's an example of how civics has just escaped us. It's just escaped us. And Ramaswamy's trying to bring it back, make it cool again. And I'm with him. I want to bring it back and make it cool again as well. So this simulation brings it back and makes it cool again, because you really get a feel, for how the process will work. You really will get a feel for, if you weren't sure about things, a lot of stuff's going to come up where these guys are tossing ideas around. Now, how does the simulation work? How does an actual convention work? So that's actually a very good question to ask. And one of the things that I will tell you is this: these guys are going to be in this convention, assuming the initial process has already been taken care of and the convention has been called. So what happens before this? Well, before this is what's happening now, right? We're all rallying in our states to get with our local district legislatures, and hopefully you're doing that, in assistance with Convention of States action, because they're organized and organization is key. And so we're organizing and getting with our district captains in these areas and getting to these legislators to get them to pass resolutions that are calling for the convention. Now, we've got 19 passed now, and we need to get 2/3 of the states. That would be 34. So this simulated convention is assuming that 34 states has already been gotten, and that Congress at that point shall call a convention. So if you read Article 5, once 34 states, 2/3 of the states, of the several states, put in for a convention or pass resolutions or petition for a convention, right? Then Congress shall call the convention. It's an administrative task. They don't get to decide. They don't have any power in this sense. It's just, here's the petitions, call the convention. Once it's called, Congress, federal government, Supreme Court, president, everybody, deep state, the whole nine. All right, you're all not involved in this. You're all not involved in this. What happens then is the states will then choose delegates. Now, in this simulation, from what I understand, they're keeping it to between 1 and 3 delegates per state. However, in a live situation, the states can select as many delegates as they want. There's one state could send 20 if they want. They won't, but they could. And it doesn't matter how many they send, because every state is going to have one vote at the convention, which is another key thing that some people don't really get. It's not a population-based piece. This is a convention of the states. The states are all equal. Each state gets a vote. That's how it works. All right. Now, they're sent there with topics, specific topics that they can talk about. Now, this is important because you can validate this on my website, and you'll see I have links with all the states and the actual resolutions for those that have them pending or have passed them, so you can read them. You'll read that they are all identical in the topics that are allowed to be discussed. And actually, I saw an email come through from Rita Peters not long ago that was basically breaking down, I want to say it was 10 states who have actually passed legislation above and beyond the resolution that keeps their delegate or commissioner, in line with the topics and threatens legal action and criminality if they break from it. It's not really necessary to do that, but they've done that to ease the fears that have been stoked by by these cult organizations like JBS, George Soros's Common Cause, and others who are all in lockstep trying to fight against our power. But nonetheless, with or without, they go ahead and they select their delegates. Generally speaking, we want to be engaged in this process, of course, and we would like to see them select people who, you're going to want at least one guy who's, a fiscally sound economic mind, right? You're not going to want, one of these doo-doos that are just rich and are, off the chain, socialist. You're going to need a real economic mind, no, monetary theory garbage or anything else that got us into the problems we're in today. So you'll want someone like that. You're going to want a historian on these commissions. And that's the reason why it's more than one, right? You want a group of solid minds to be able to debate these issues and come down to what the wording should look like, what contingencies there can be. Really think through, an amendment before they pass it for proposal, right? And so what we're going to see in the simulation is the process. Now, once they've been selected and the convention is called, and I believe this one as well is in Colonial Williamsburg, Virginia, I believe, which is awesome. It's a great setting, right? Something like that, or Pennsylvania, just an awesome setting for this. And so you're going to see them all meeting the same way every convention has met, in similar fashion to the actual constitutional convention that met, where they get together. Hopefully, they'll have some air conditioning and some better accommodations than the founders had. And that's not to say this is a constitutional convention. This is a convention under a constitution proposing amendments, but they will meet and they will start to iron out the language of proposed amendments under these topics. And of course, in doing so, they're going to have to remember whatever they put out there's got to get ratified, right? So trying to do some whimsical, crazy stuff would make no sense, because the bar to get it ratified is so high that there's just no way that these things, that wacky stuff will get through. Now, what kind of things do I believe personally will get through? Well, term limits, I think, is a home run. I do believe a balanced budget amendment in some form is going to make it through ratification. I think there will be something on regulatory agencies that will restrict their authority and force that back to Congress. And then I believe, from the wish list side, I should say, I would like to see a repeal of the 16th Amendment. I saw today a gentleman was speaking and talking about a grassroots proposed amendment for a flat tax. He did get it a little confused with the fair tax. The fair tax being a consumption tax, which I am very much in favor of. So basically tariffs are the way that it was prior to the 16th Amendment, as the 16th Amendment was continually shot down in courts, which is why they went for that amendment, because it perfectly lines up right around the time the Fed was created. Call it a coincidence. I'm not a big believer in that anymore. But in the end, I'd like to see that gone. There are things on my wish list that I would like to see gone. But really, what I'd like to see is the convention called for real and executed, the process gone all the way through and completed. And just to demonstrate in real life how it works. And this simulation serves as an avenue to do that, to give people an idea of exactly how it works. And I'm sure there will be an example of someone trying to go off topic, someone trying to, do being called to order. Like, those types of things are things that you can get to watch, as you watch this unfold, because there's no greater civics lesson than this in our day. All right. We've been deprived of civics for a half a century, more than that. And the opportunity to have your kids or young ones or any patriot-minded person to sit down and watch and experience and get into this is just phenomenal. And I think it's something that you absolutely should not miss. Arthur Tooth, how are you, sir, over on Facebook? Pleasure to have you on, sir. Pleasure to have you on. Mern, another one of our Convention of States awesome humans in leadership in Jersey, district captain. And single subject is a great idea. Yeah, single subject is that one, I think, by the way, on the list of ones that will get play, that will get ratified. That's one that will get ratified. This one, almost as much as term limits, because states already have this. States already have this in their own constitutions. So it's going to be an easy one to get across. It's going to make a lot of sense to a lot of state legislatures. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense why it's not already in play. Mike Arnold over on Facebook, I would like to see the executive orders expire after X amount of days unless both houses agree. Perhaps a 65% vote. That's not a bad idea. Now, that may render Trump useless in a presidency. Just playing. But Trump did pump out a lot of executive orders. So, but you know what? In the end, also, Mike, I think executive orders expire pretty quickly anyway, because honestly, rarely do all the states even listen to them. And like if Trump does an executive order, California and New York are like, bafana, and if Biden does executive orders, Texas and whatever, they were like, bafana, and it is what it is, right? So, I mean, I don't really have a lot of respect for executive orders. I think they're funny almost. as people celebrate them. And like, it's like, dude, he doesn't have the power to do this. No one has to listen to him, and no one that doesn't want to listen to him is going to listen to him. It's just meaningless. But you're right. Curb that executive order thing for sure. Mike Arnold commenting on the earlier comment about Pennsylvania, that they have a very strong and active team in place right now. Yeah, we're very hopeful that Pennsylvania will pull through. There was a point where, Mark Meckler was talking incredibly favorably about Pennsylvania, and he doesn't really spill the beans often. And there was a point where he was reached out to and contacted by multiple people, one from each house at least, and that had said it looks really strong. And they actually had, and I watched this one, they had a committee. It wasn't a committee hearing to pass committee, but it was like the committee. There's apparently a gun advocate group in Pennsylvania that is trying to spark fear that somehow we're going after the Second Amendment. There's no rationality to his argument. He was kind of embarrassed at this meeting, and I think it went very well for the Convention of States movement. But at the same time, because it was awkward, everybody in the meeting was pro Second Amendment, and yet they were like forcing an argument on Second Amendment. It made no sense. But at the same time, I think it showed. And I think that swayed some committee members, because it wasn't long. It was maybe 6 months after that where Meckler had made the comment that more than one legislator had reached out to him. Now, that was about 7 months ago, 6 or 7 months ago. So I'm not familiar with Pennsylvania's timeline. It was before the last round of was it? I don't know if it was before. Yeah, it was November, right? Is when they turned over some seats everywhere. So I don't know how that affected everything, but I know that Pennsylvania is hot on the board. So we're looking forward to that. Let me see here. All right, here's Mern put up a comment saying, you missed my first message. All right, so, hey, George, Mern from Jersey, just got home from our monthly meeting in South Jersey. A guy brought in 5 new petitions signed. Yeah, and that's awesome, right? That's awesome. And this is what grassroots is, folks. Of the, 2.5, 3 million, whatever it's at now, petitions that are signed. And it's important to sign those petitions, folks, for your legislator, because it prompts a letter to get sent to them to let them know that you're in favor of. And, for those of you, it's important to understand where your state is in this. Are you one of the 19 already? Are you close? Are you someone where you might be the one to tip them over, right? It's important, because I could tell you, South Carolina, was one where I was listening. I'm watching the debates when they were on the floor, fingers crossed, hoping this thing goes through. And I'm listening to the legislature speak. And it really, the conversations that they have with their constituents, right? I mean, and it wasn't just South Carolina. This was in a few states. But like one representative was like, I was against this. I was always against this. And he's thinking back, and he's like, I'm not really sure why. I just, I was told that this was dangerous, and I believed it, and I didn't go any further. So I had voted against it for years. And it took some 9 years to get it passed in South Carolina. And 9 years because this man who now is sponsoring it, right? I think this was South Carolina. I got to go back and look at that. But it definitely was the case that, like, this man, this representative, was holding back the vote, or, opposing it severely. And what changed him was one constituent who approached him and asked him to have tea, which I thought was a little bit weird. Why not coffee? Who drinks tea? But I'm not judging. Who asked him to have tea, and over this cup of tea, and they had a conversation, and it wasn't long. It was maybe, he had about 15 minutes to a half hour to give to this man. And they sat down talking, and the constituent asked him one thing. He gave him some materials from, that were educational on the verge, a list of some things to read, and then some materials, and said, just do me one favor and promise me that you will seriously look into this and read it, because I'm 100% confident that if you do, you will change your position on this issue. And so he did. And he told this story on, in the legislature while the vote was being debated, and explained that this one constituent who got him to commit, right? That and that was the thing. It was kind of an on your honor thing where, look, you promised me you were going to do this. And state legislators are not federal legislators. Like, if you're not familiar with the difference, you should look into that. They're a whole different animal. These are not lifetime career politicians. These are local business owners, employees of companies, things of that nature, who are just doing service. Some of them don't even get paid. Some of them get paid. I think New Hampshire was $100 a session. They never voted themselves a raise since the 1700s. So these are statesmen for the most part. And it's important, especially if you're in those heartland countries. Some of these districts are 200, 300 people. They're not huge districts. So the influence there, if you know the chain, right? I get you to look into it, right? You look into it, you check it out. You can go to there's links on my website. There's links on conventionestates.com as well. And COS University and everything. You start to go down the path, right? You start to learn about this. You start to educate yourself on it. You then get someone else to do it, right? Or maybe you get 2 people to do it. Those people get 2 people to do it, etc. You wait till it gets to 50, 100 people. You're all in with your district captains now. You all know, how many people are involved. You get up a group, 100 people can sway a whole freaking thing, can sway a whole House vote. 100 people in a district of 3,000 is significant. 5,000, 10,000. These are significant because that's 100 people who left work, who took a day off just because this meant that much to them. Handwritten letters, stuff like that. There's ways to get active. There's ways to get involved. This simulation is going to show you what the end result can be. And no matter what they end up proposing, all right, and by the way, it's a simple majority. So every state gets 1 vote. It's a simple majority. 26 votes will win the day. Okay, so 26. Well, and when I say win the day, that means that particular item, worded as such, will be sent to the states as a proposal to be voted on for ratification, which is where the real hard part begins. Because you're talking 38 states. You got 99 legislatures, right? 2 in every one but Nebraska. So you've got 99 legislatures, and it only takes, it only takes really 13 houses to 13 of those 99. 13 can shut the whole thing down. And I know Mike brought up to me one time, really it's less than that because it's committees. So it's got to pass committees. So 13 committees, which have 3 or 4 people on some of them, could shut the whole thing down. It's not easy to pass a constitutional amendment. And it's important for everybody to understand that. It shouldn't be easy. It's not easy. And that's, that's a good point. And Michael just threw at me as I went on bashing executive orders. The Emancipation Proclamation was indeed an executive order. And I guess, I guess the uniqueness of the timing of the Emancipation Proclamation, where, it really was written in a sense to kind of put out the point that, I still see this as a union, right? And this is what, it was almost like a trolling move to some degree. Of course, it was done to get to be allowed to enlist, right? But at the same time, this was, you're right. You got a good point. But I will say this, and I will rephrase it. Most executive orders are not listened to. And even the Emancipation Proclamation, there were states who were like, I ain't doing that. Now, of course, we were in a civil war, but hey, it is what it is. Norm Sanders says, save the children. Absolutely, Norm. And Norm, I want you to understand, because I'm big on save our children as well. All right. And by the way, for those that are down with me on save our children, which should be everybody, if you haven't been keeping track, Sound of Freedom is that it's no longer just doing great for a Christian movie or just doing great for a low budget movie. It has surpassed the $125 million mark. It is smashing. It is smashing. So keep up the fire with that, folks, because it's making a statement at this point, and it's all about eyeballs on that movie. It's all about eyeballs on that movie. But Norm, my point to you, is that convention of states, while there's not a lot with the exception maybe of education, because we can shut down the Department of Education with this. We can with this particular convention. That would fall under government overreach. Education is not a part of the government's powers given to them in the Constitution, among many others. So that's a big one that can be dealt with. But more widely than that, all right, these federal agencies that have not been dealt with, they can be dealt with. All right, and the idea of getting this convention across, it's important to understand, even if there's an item, and I usually use the border on this, which would directly impact this as well. The border is a situation that's not going to be covered in this particular convention. And for some people, they say, well, if the border is not going to be covered, because for them, that's the only issue, right? And they say, if that's not going to be covered, then this isn't worth it. And I beg to differ tremendously, not only because the other topics are incredibly important as well. We can chew gum and walk at the same time, but also because the relationship change between the federal government and the people after a convention is successfully called is enormous. Understand the power shift, okay? Even if all of the amendments don't get approved, understand the power shift, okay? Because the federal government has gained its power to be where it is right now, which right now, is playing middleman in child trafficking schemes, via CPS and other foster care organizations, stemming from the border and other issues. I could do a whole nother episode on that. I have done episodes on that. But that aside, the relationship changes dramatically. Now, look, where we're at right now, what are we doing? We scream, we want the border secured, and the government just flips us off. The government just says, you want it secure? Tough nuggies. We're not securing anything. Forget it. Well, if we have a successful convention that's already been called and done, here's what happens when the government does that, not just on the border, but for any situation going forward. All of a sudden, the border states, Texas, Arizona, et cetera, probably not California, but, Florida for sure, right? All of the border states will be signing petitions to call for convention, and other states will be doing the same. Now, and the attitude will be, maybe you didn't just see what happened, federal government, but we just imposed term limits on you. We just changed the way that you're allowed to do business. We've just shut down your regulatory agencies. Dealing with immigration and protecting the border is one of the few responsibilities that you've been left with. And if you're choosing to deny that responsibility and not take care of business, then we're going to take that power away from you. Now, that's not a scenario that would even have to come to fruition. Because the federal, you could bet your bottom that if momentum starts building on that, there will be National Guard, there will be military, there will be anything that is necessary to calm people down. And this is how a government that works for the people is supposed to behave. And right now, we're not in that place. Post-convention, we're in that place. And the issue can be anything. Right? Now, we're not going to be calling conventions over menial things that states should be able to work out on their own, but there are a lot of existential problems that this nation is dealing with, and most of which, in my opinion, were created by the Supreme Court over the course of hundreds of years, or 100 years or more. Some of it, most of it, small little decisions, some big, but most of them death by 1,000 cuts. Just small intrusions from the federal government. You got some big ones like allowing the New Deal to take place. But then there's also a lot of little small ones, Those small deals where the government, regulatory agencies, even recently with the whole COVID vaccine, we want to think, oh well, this great Supreme Court, the Supreme Court we have, knocked down the vaccine mandate. There's more to it than that. Only Gorsuch and Thomas understood where that case laid constitutionally. Amy Barrett and Kavanaugh, the rest of these doo-doos, they were doing it for all the wrong reasons. John Roberts, they're doing it they went ahead and shut it down only because Congress had not specifically given them such authorization. The only ones that actually said, even if Congress did give them OSHA the authorization, even if they did, this is no good. Like, they don't have the ability to do that. It was only Gorsuch and Thomas that knew that. So it's always living one bad Supreme Court justice decision away from tyranny is not okay. And fortunately, our Constitution gives us the power to undo a lot of that garbage. All the powers that were given in the Commerce Clause, those were all Supreme Court decisions that gave those powers. All of it. And there's only one way. Like people think to themselves, oh, the Supreme Court, that's the final word. When it's not the final word. We're the final word. Just like the left imposed income tax on this nation, forever crippling us and taking control of our economy, just like they did that, which was denied by the Supreme Court time and time again, they did it through amendment. They went ahead and they amended the Constitution. This is one of the key factors that why I get so heated when people call this country a democracy or even a democratic constitution, because it is not. And even in a democratic republic, it is not. It is a constitutional republic. There's a huge difference between those two things. In a democratic republic, I have people that just always seem to find the ideal time to start texting me rapidly in mini sentences. So it's not the big difference between democratic republic and constitutional republic. Democratic republic, yes, in both cases, we elect our leaders. However, once our leaders are in a democratic republic, majority rules, they're done. They can rule on anything. In a constitutional republic, they cannot. The powers they have to rule on are limited to the Constitution, which doesn't exist in a democratic republic, which is why the vernacular, this is why the effort to change the verbiage of American society into calling it a democracy has been in play. It's not an accident. This isn't something that just everyone just sort of equated it. No. It was repeated to people through education system and elsewhere that we're a democracy. It's never, you tell me at what class they taught you, what chapter of social studies did they teach you that a democracy was a specific form of government seriously and actively avoided by the founders of the United States of America? More than likely what you heard in those classes, all right, and it's not even a teacher's fault because we're so deep in, even Gen X's teachers were taught this way. Okay? Like, they believe this stuff. That's the same thing, they'll tell you. Very similar. They're not similar. It drives me nuts, and I'm going to scream at the top of my lungs every opportunity I get. And then Mike says, God's children are not for sale. Yeah, one of the best lines in the movie. And that movie crushed me. Like, I almost came to tears. I swear to God. Like, I rewatched my episode where I talked about it after I watched it. And I think, I don't know, maybe you saw it differently, but I think I did a pretty good job holding it together. But there were moments where I had to stop and I just had emotion building up inside. When I watched that movie, I cried in it, and I don't want I wasn't screaming, but men, you know what I'm talking about, right? You got that straight face on, you're holding it in, but you feel that in your chest, right? And then a tear or two comes down. Usually we don't express something like that unless it's a funeral or something along those lines. My daughter was like bugging out because she's like she saw me cry at my dad's funeral, and like that's pretty much it. So it was, it was powerful. And even when I talked about it here, it was powerful. Because to me, the thing about the movie that connected was that the two kids that they were focusing on, it was a single dad who was bringing them up. And I'm not a single dad, right? I got my wife's awesome, and she's huge in this household. But like, just the fact that it was a dad just hit it home, even more for me. And like, it was just rough. It was a rough watch. But everyone should see that. And absolutely. Yep. Don't play with God's children. Look, there's a reckoning coming for a lot of people. And, we'll see what happens with that. And then Mike's saying that all amounts to a 3,000 page version of our Constitution. Yeah. And I'm using a different camera today. I don't have the same software to pop this thing up, but Mike had sent me an excellent picture of the 3,000 page annotated. What he's talking about here is my comments about the Supreme Court, death by 1,000 cuts, all of these decisions. There's a 3,000 page book called The Constitution of the United States. And I have I can see the pictures don't format right for this software, is why. I'll try to show you this, but if you look at that big one in the background, that's it. Now you can't see the whole thing, but that's the difference between the two. And that was a pocket constitution up against it. That 3,000 page book is the one that the government works off of, because it includes every Supreme Court decision ever. Okay, ever. And so it's that book that we need to rip some pages out of until it starts looking more like the pocket version that's leaning up against it. And so that is what that really, in simple terms, is what Convention of States is all about. In simple terms, that's what it's all about. All right, let me see what else we got here. So Darren Wayne Smith, when did history classes change into social studies? I don't know the exact year. I know I was in grammar school in the early 80s. And, so I guess I started kindergarten in the late 70s. But once I got, if you figure fifth grade was 81, 82, I was getting social studies. So it was already, now Yuri Bezmenov, if anyone doesn't know who I'm talking about, Yuri Bezmenov was an old KGB defector. He's a great interview you can find on YouTube. I highly recommend everybody go look at it and check it out, where he breaks down ideological subversion and what the Soviet tactic was. Tactic that they started in the mid-50s that many knew about. Ayn Rand wrote a book based on her experience and seeing it in Atlas Shrugged. She wrote a book about it. It was a fictional book, but it was prophetic. I'm sure all of you know what Atlas Shrugged is. If you don't, you need to read it. You'll bug out. It's prophecy to what we're living in today. And so the bottom line is they changed it in that process. So I don't know. It was like the end of the boomers, beginning of Gen X is where it got changed. Yeah. So and Mike is saying early 70s. Like it was gone when I hit second or third grade. It was already social studies, and that was that. And you look back at it now and you're like, social studies, like, oh my God, it's like so obvious. Like once your eyes are open, it's so obvious. But back then, people's eyes were not open. Back then we were living in a different time. People thought it would be impossible. Khrushchev in that famous statement he made one day your kids will live under socialism. Like he was talking about this ideological subversion. People were looking at him like he's crazy, like he's just some crazy leader talking smack. But like, it's not it's not. He was not talking smack. They had a plan that the CCP, who also wanted to take down the United States, come 1990 with the fall of the Soviet Union, slipped right in there and kept it going. Started putting in the Confucius Institutes. There was no stopping that movement. Okay, no stopping. We defeated communism. And meanwhile, we're not even looking at China. Meanwhile, by that time, our universities were already perversely gone. Generations of professors were handing each other plaques and trophies over nonsense. celebrating bizarre theories like modern monetary theory, all designed to take down the United States in the long term. Not the people who taught it, but like when Yuri talks about taking out Hollywood and taking over, the political scene and taking over the education system, like it's not like when they took over Hollywood and the music scene. I did this with my brother. He was like, "You telling me Motley Crue was trying to subvert America?" It's like, no, but the producers who selected Motley Crue were. The producers who selected Black Sabbath were. The producers who, and I can go on and on with the Deathless and the devil symbolism and all of that was going on in music of that day. It's not the bands. The bands are just out there, trying to do death metal and whatever they were doing. It was the producers who were hand selecting. If you look at what happened to most of those bands after they got out of the producers' clutches, all of a sudden the devil and demonic imagery and all that stuff was gone. Every one of them. Every one of them. It's not a coincidence. Look, it's a total mind screw that we were all a part of, and we're all in it together to turn it around. And so they've got a 70-year head start on us. Well, the one thing they don't have is the Constitution of the United States. And even with a 70-year head start, they have not been able to subvert the Constitution of the United States, even though a huge portion of our youth don't even know what free speech is. They have not been able to destroy free speech. And now that people's eyes are open, it's going to make it almost impossible. Like Xi Jinping jumped the shark on this one. He should have just stayed quiet and kissed our ass like his predecessors did so that nobody's eyes open. But he didn't. He came out strong. He came out in beast mode, and now people are open. Now people have woken up. And now it's a problem for him. It's a major problem for him. Him and his WEF cronies and all of them. It's a big problem for them. And I'm telling you right now, there is nothing they are afraid of more than the United States calling a convention of states. There is nothing that these people fear more, because there's nothing that can do more instant damage to them than this. Nothing. There's nothing that can absolutely roll a holy hand grenade right in the middle of their boardroom. Nothing does it more than this right here. Nothing. Like, if you look at history, there are constant attempts to subvert the Constitution. Constant. Sometimes they get away with it, but they're usually tried and it goes through. In the end, they get away with it for a bit of time, but then it gets shut down. The Constitution, it may be dented and beaten up a little, but it's still intact and it's still protecting us. And that's not going to be that way forever unless we start using it to empower ourselves. We've already lost some of our youth. We got to re-educate them. That sounds creepy to even say, but we at least have to show them what civics is. We at least have to teach them how the government is designed to work and why. We owe this to them. And right now, whether it's your grandkids or your kids, right now, our government, a simulation of how our government is supposed to behave is about to take place. One that's going to define an event that when it happens in real time, when the real convention gets called, it's going to be remembered for centuries. Mark my words. When I talk to the grassroots, when I'm blessed enough to talk to the different grassroots people, right, and different district captains and whatnot, I always try to joke and say, look, if you guys are at an event and there's cameras around, you need to make sure the pictures they take of you are good, because they may very well end up in a textbook 250 years from now. Now, you're not going to get away with, well, the photography sucked back then. Like with those old crusty pictures, like if, you ain't going to be able to get away. There's going to be a crisp ass, high def picture. Now, you got to make sure you got your Sunday best on for that event, because I'm telling you, it's for real. It's for real. And Jerry, I see you out there, my man, but those links are going to take up a huge portion of the screen if I try and put these on. Jerry Rowe is dropping some science down on the Facebook page. I don't know if you guys from Rumble and YouTube are following me there, but it's a good. He's got some good links here. Can we trust the Constitution? Federalist paper number 85. Some good stuff here that Jerry's dropping. So, Jerry, I appreciate that. I appreciate that information being dropped in the comments. But, look, my focus, folks, is just to get you guys watching the simulated convention. That's it. Go to conventionofstates.com, sign the petition, get registered in your state, even if your state is already on board. Even if you're from one of the 19 states that have already signed on, still sign on. Educate people. This is what we need. This is what we need. Pick anyone you know that loves this country and ask them what Article 5 is. And see if they can tell you. And if they do tell you, ask them, or better yet, ask them, is there any way that the people of the United States can amend the Constitution without the federal government? The answer will almost always be no. Even from people who know the Constitution. Trust me when I tell you, the education here is so necessary. It's crazy. And the fact of the matter is, we're so close. We're so close. But everybody keeps going after the shiny toy. Everybody they're going to arrest Trump. Oh, they're going to do this. Oh, DeSantis and Trump are going at it again. Oh, they do like that's all noise, guys. It's all noise. It's not that the president's not important or any of that, but frankly speaking, Trump and DeSantis debate is just stupid to me. Like, as far as the things we care about, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I don't care how adamant you are one way or the other. It's six of one, half dozen of the other. In the end, no matter who gets in, the president can't do the things that we're talking about doing. So how about we focus on the big issues? And this is a great example of watching how the big issues get tackled, watching the brilliance of the founders of this nation in how they designed this and why it lasted so long. There's a reason. There's a reason why the Constitution, despite the constant assaults, there's a reason why the Constitution has lasted as long as it has. And it's because of the foresight. It's because of how much they saw coming, how much they understood axioms in history. They knew that the creation of this federal government, no matter how many checks, balances, and whatever they put in there, they knew that the nature of any government is to grow. Because at some point, and it's the people's fault. So it's almost like you've got to put stuff in help people protect them from themselves, because it's tempting when you get screwed by someone. It's like, I need justice. And you look to the government. Little by little, they give justice. Sometimes it's on things that they should give justice. Maybe your rights really were violated. Other times they're creating new rights. Then you get to the point where you don't even know the difference. And then you wake up 100 years later like, what the hell happened to the United States? I don't even understand where I am. So they knew this would happen. They didn't know, CCP. They didn't know Xi Jinping and the fact that he would dominate the UN and, control all this WEF craziness. They didn't know all this. What they did know was that the government was doomed to grow too large and that the ultimate check, right? They put in the 3 branches, they put in all these checks and balances, but the ultimate check needs to belong to the people, and it does, and we don't even know it. We don't even know it. Jerry says, however good Trump is, he's still temporary. Amendments are long-lasting. Yeah, absolutely. And that's my point, right? That's my point. It's like, whether legislation can be overturned, right? Executive orders are worth piss. But even if you got legislation, it can be done by, you're just waiting for the next. They're not going to come in and overturn amendments. This process is not easy. What we get put in here now, if we could repeal the 16th Amendment, we will change the course of this nation forever. in a good way. If we replace that with a consumption tax and let you keep all of your earned income, the incentive to earn becomes massive. Innovation starts to boom. Everything that we're about, okay, begins to boom. Because when you leave, people know how to spend their money better than the government does. Period. You know how many people will get that extra money and grow charities? Who, by the way, solve problems 10 times better than the government does. Like there was a world before government trying to, hand take care of everybody. And it was a good world with good people. There's no reason. And now we're so much further advanced than that world. We've come such a long way in so many areas. This experiment has gone on, and tackled some of the natural issues like monopolies. Obviously, civil rights is an issue. We've tackled these massive issues in both capitalism and society, and we've got the benefit now of having all those things figured out. Now we just want our freedom back. We just want our freedom back. And there's just no reason why we can't have it. So, folks, I'm going to be on next Monday. Not next Monday. I'm sorry. I'm going to be on next Wednesday, and Friday I will absolutely be on at some point. I'm going to try and see if I can get the day off. If I can, then maybe we'll do like an all day type of dial in with it playing in the background. I got to see how I would logistically set that up, but that being said, I am going to come on for sure to talk about the simulation. I definitely will tell everybody who is on right now to make sure, set a reminder for it. Head over to conventionestates.com, get yourself signed up, get yourself put in it. They're going to be sending out materials with reminders as well. But, and you can follow obviously follow my channel, but follow the YouTube channels for Convention Estates. They're also on Rumble and Facebook and everywhere else, MeWe, etc. So, but keep yourself informed, folks. Keep yourself informed. You'll find if you go into conventionestates.com website, you will find, or just type in, Convention Estates simulation, you will find the August 4th simulation. So register for it. They'll send you the stream. It's pretty cool. And honestly, it is, as I put in the title, the greatest civics lesson ever taught. And it's important that we take civics seriously because it's something that we've all been denied. And it's something that how many times in the last 10 years, even in the last 3 years, have you learned something new about the way this government is supposed to run as opposed to how it runs? We're that way because we've been deprived. It's been taken out of our system, and I'll be damned if I'm going to let it just stay gone forever. We need to bring it back, and that takes effort. So get as many youth as you can, get as many peers as you can, and just get on it and be all over. We're going to talk about it again next Wednesday, but then Friday, I assure you I will be coming on to talk about the actual results of it, what amendments were passed, some key points in the debating and things like that. I'll bring on Mike Arnold, State Director over in and anyone else really that we can muster from leadership at Convention Estates to just kind of have a talk and a powwow about how it went, and kind of entertain your comments and go down that road. So until next week, folks, I appreciate you. Make sure that you follow, subscribe. I am still adamant about trying to build the Rumble channel. I know it's slow going over at the Rumble channel, but with 16,000 plus people and growing on the Facebook side, we got to push you over there. Just get over there as a hedge, just in case, even if you're not constantly getting on Rumble. Just get over there, because if I disappear one day, which happens, especially if you're watching me on YouTube, like on YouTube, I can almost guarantee you that it's just a matter of time before I disappear again. But, you know what? Before I go, I did say that I wanted to cover some folks' amendments. So I'm going to go over one in each category. All right, I'll do that because I should have done that before. and I didn't. So to give you an idea, the grassroots were able, so that was anticlimactic, right? I probably lost like 10 people across the networks. It's like, wait a minute, he's back. What do you mean? So I'm going to give you a few here that I have laid out, one in each category. So now I'm going to just, so here's an interesting one on the term limits, okay? I don't want to get too deep into this, but I am going to share my screen and kind of show you what this is. So the it's running a little slow. I'll get it up there in just a moment. Oh, you know what? I have it open on a different browser than the one. Okay. So it's number 5. All right. I got it. Give me a second. All right. There we go. So here's one of the proposed amendments that one of our grassroots put out. I thought this was interesting. We're going to start with term limits. I thought it was interesting because it brought up the issue of judges. Now, the topic is term limits for all federal officials. And so this is one I thought I would like to see in the comments for people to toggle over, because I kind of had some questions, and I wanted to toggle this out, and maybe some of my convention of states folks can help reel me in on this. This is not the first time that I've heard the justices being termed, and I don't mind it in a sense, but I have issues with some parts of it. But here we go. Let's read it. Supreme Court, and this was just written by someone like you and me. These are just people who had an opportunity. But I have heard people say this before in similar terms. Supreme Court of the United States should be comprised of 9 judges, each serving a single term consisting of 12 years, delegated into 3 classes of 3 judges, which appointments shall be staggered in 4-year increments. So this person really thought this out, right? So they really thought this out, right? You've got 12 years, right, in total term, delegated into 3 classes of 3 justices, right? So they break down 3 different every term, right? The terms will be successive every 4 years, and 3 judges will get replaced every 4 years. That's the way that's what this all means. So basically, it'll be 12 years total, but they're going to stagger them so that there's 3 changing every 4 years. So I thought that was an interesting, thought out process from our grassroots folks who did this. I don't know who the person is, but which appointments shall be staggered for? Okay, so Supreme Court class terms shall be staggered. So to begin on the 17th. So they get really specific about the day and whatnot. But I think it says Congress will organize the justices of the Supreme Court into 3 classes with justices assigned. So this is more about the technicality of how it would work. But my question is more on the general principle. My question is more on my concern, I should say, is presidents still appointing judges. Now, I'm all for the justices being, I understand why the founders made them for life, but I think if they're term limited, it's very similar, because in the end, there's still no reason for them to waver on a decision for political reasons. They're still not necessarily voted in. Once they're in, right? So even if they were voted in, once you're in, you're in. And my attitude is, if we're going to term limit them, and it's going to be, at the whim every 4 years, another 3 are going to flush in. If you get 2-term president who's Marxist in nature, which we've now demonstrated that we can do, 3 terms actually, right? Whether we want to talk about the 2020 election, I understand, but in the end, we've demonstrated that an 8-year term can easily exist with with justices being a problem, and or I should say with presidents being a problem and them picking the justices. So like in essence, now yes, they would turn over every 3 years, and another. I mean, this particular one is probably one of the more well thought out ones that I've seen. But I would just say I might feel better if the states were choosing justices. And I like the fact that they set the number at 9. I don't really care where the number gets set. I just want it set. I don't want them to be able to add. Now I've heard to have like a large communal of 50 judges, one per state. I think that might be a little overboard, but some form of state representation from the judges, so that small states that aren't on these liberal psychosis runs, have influence and can still be represented by the Supreme Court. So I'm just curious. Leave in the comments what you guys think about that. That's just something. That's one that kind of got me thinking. But we'll see. Fiscal restraints. So there was one here. Where is it? Some of them look how big. Oh, you're not even seeing this. Sorry, hold on. Sorry, I have 2 different browsers open because if my other browser works too hard, the one that's used in the studio, then the software cannot handle it. So let me see here. Huh. Chrome will not allow me to open up this window. That is wild. So I will just read it to you because Chrome will not allow me to open up the window. That's kind of wild that it's allowing me on Microsoft, but not on Chrome. Crazy. All right, so let me give you one here from Fiscal Restraints. Now, obviously, balanced budget is one, but we have one that put up here: Congress shall not spend more revenue than is brought into the Treasury annually. So this is a version of the balanced budget amendment. Any member of Congress that votes to spend more than revenue brought in will be ineligible to run for re-election. So it's that portion that made me talk about this one, because balanced budget amendment is all well and good, but it's not going to have teeth and bite unless there's a consequence to Congress. And I think, I think that's important for the delegates to understand and the commissioners to understand when they get selected and sent out, to convention, because you have to have teeth in it. I've seen people think that putting teeth in it was like, well, we're just going to restrict the next year's budget. I'm like, no, that's not teeth. I'm like, teeth is like, you can no longer, you can't run again. If you're a part of a Congress that failed to balance a budget, you cannot run again, which means everybody's seat is up for grabs in the next election, and you ain't running. Right. So it's not like you have to run again and people have to vote you in again. It's like, no, we let you in, you failed, and now you can't run again. Like when we tell you that we want a balanced budget, like we're serious. And if you can't get one, well, we're going to throw you out. And that's how it's going to work. So on the fiscal restraints, now the other one I would bring up is repealing the 16th Amendment, but I already talked about that. But I think the balanced budget amendment is the most likely to get ratified. So it's imperative that that amendment have teeth. It's imperative that that amendment have teeth, because, that's just, to me, they have to be punished, right? There has to be fear. They have to know if they want to stay in power, they cannot do it unless they're going to get knocked out by failure. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. And so Mern says 9 is good, but the senior judges help the newer judges coming in. Senior judges are strong in opinions. They learn the Constitution as they go to better keep our country on track. Yeah, I kind of like that too. So, and you're saying that's number 9? Person serving in the House of Representatives shall be limited to 2 6-year terms, total no more of 12. Here's another House. A person in the Senate. And I'm not 9 on which one? This must be on the. Oh, you know what? I don't have. I only have. No, I'm looking at 9, which I like. On the legislative and executive side, one of the amendment proposals was very simple, and I love simplicity. The federal government shall not legislate on matters not outlined in the original Constitution. Period. Even though it's already there in the 10th Amendment. But like, I do feel like more specifics are needed because it's there in the 10th Amendment, right? So you can't, clearly they've worked their way around explaining to judges who then agreed that it would be okay to get involved in education, in work safety, in pharmaceutical market, in the healthcare market, like all of this stuff that the Constitution does not empower them to do at all. Courts have granted those powers over years. And this is why, folks, this is why, when it comes down to it, amendments are the only way. They're the only way. The JBS cult are all talking about nullification. You're not nullifying. There's a million different laws. You're causing chaos. Nullification might be fine going forward after the amendments are in place, but the amendments got to be in place. Like, there's sweeping change that comes with a few sentences in an amendment, undoing whatever bizarre logic and 20-page opinion some random Supreme Court justice penned 80 years ago, usurping our freaking constitutional authority and allowing the government to do things that it wasn't allowed to. The only way to fix that is through amendment. And this is it. This is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. And obviously, I think that the privacy that, now that we're at it and we've got the subject there, we need to address privacy in finance. We need to address privacy in general. And it's not that it's not covered in the Constitution. It's that, again, we need clarity for the courts for upcoming technologies that are going to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And they're going to have terms of service that no one's going to read. They're going to click, like, all of that needs to be negated, regardless of your terms of service, regardless of what you put out there. If you're surveilling American citizenry in any way without a warrant and without due process, you go to jail. Period. And that needs to be broad. That needs to be overwhelmingly clear, so that no justice can ever sit there and try and pick it apart. I mean, how clear is the Second Amendment? You still have people like, well, it says a militia, and it's like you still have people out there who can't. Like, it needs to be overwhelmingly blunt and clear that no currency can be acceptable that does not allow private transactions, and no surveillance shall be permissible. That's a huge one. That's a huge one, right? So those are the 3, folks, that I picked as the ones that I think should be. One of them was one that I wrote in, though, so maybe that's cheating a little. The privacy one was mine, and so I was a little sad that they didn't pick it when they were talking about they were picking some examples. I think it was today or yesterday on a live broadcast with COS, and I was like, oh, pick mine. They didn't pick mine, but that's okay. That doesn't make it less important. There were 300, and they didn't get to pick mine. But says, I hate the fact that everyone asks for your ID to buy nasal spray. It keeps opening doors for identity theft. Yeah, there's a lot of creepy stuff that are going on from an identity theft standpoint. And really, the surveillance of the government has already kind of gotten past where it should be allowed to be. There's too much video surveillance on streets. There's too much like people need to just come to terms with the fact that when you live in a truly free country, that you're giving up a little bit of safety. Right? There's an element of safety that you give up because everybody's free. So, and it's not okay to infringe on rights for safety. It's not okay. There are countries you can live in that'll do that. In the UK, everything is surveilled. Okay, that's fine. No guns, everything's surveilled. You guys have at it. Have at it. The entire city of London is under surveillance. That can never be the case here. That can never. I don't give a damn if they're using the cameras to monitor traffic. I don't give a damn. That just cannot be allowed here. It just cannot. You cannot be 24/7. Like, and I don't hear, oh, but you're in the public space. My butt. You have a reasonable expectation to not be on 24/7 surveillance. Period. That's just fact. That's just my take. All right. So, all right, over on Twitch, T. Suleimanov. Suleimanov. Say it faster. I think it sounds better. Every war is a civil war because all men are brothers. Yes, there's definitely truth to that. Amen. Amen to that. Right? Every war is a civil war for sure. I'm guessing. Well, let me just see here. Nullification is not constitutional. 8 methods of interposition. Yeah, that's debatable, right? That's debatable. I mean, formally, right? And they turn to the Declaration and some other stuff that are not really executable documents in that sense. They were certainly executable to to King George, but in the end, like I'm not even opposed to nullification as like as a tool, but it's not going to fix the nation. It's way too complicated trying to you're going to have 20 states nullifying a piece of legislation but which part of that legislation? Blah, 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 blah. Like, legislation is so complicated, and this is why I love the single subject amendment. And really, the language of that amendment should have in it that it needs to be in layman's terms, right? That you cannot just write some convoluted legalese, ridiculous, nobody understands, and some lawyer interprets however they want bill, right? It needs to be readable by someone with a basic education. If you can't say it in layman's terms, then it probably should not be a law, period. Mern says America's lost its moral compass. People need to do the right thing. I don't disagree there either. I think, and I don't know that the nation has lost its moral compass. I think, I think there's a portrayal of that, but I don't think it's necessarily real, Mern. I don't. I don't think that the moral. I think the moral decline. Yes, it's true to some sense with youth and things like that. But I think in general, in this nation, as the youth grows, at least most of the indoctrinated generations, including Gen X and the boomers and even the millennials to some degree, they grow up and get older and have kids and start to recapture the morality that the ideological subversion was trying to remove. And so there's this constant attempt to capture our children, right? But in the end, I think the overall morality of the nation is in good shape. I think in big cities, maybe not as much. I think in most, regular suburban neighborhoods, morality is fine. The people that I see out there on a day-to-day basis, black, white, red, brown, whatever, they're all good people. They all, they hold doors for each other. Where I am, they pay it forward a lot at the Starbucks and other places. The people are still out there. There are plenty of good moral people, and I just feel like a lot of the reason why we believe that there aren't is because of media, because this is the messaging, this is the branding, this is what we get put in our face, a slew of bots making wacko comments on, they're not even real people, but you think they're real people. The media speaking on behalf of people that don't exist. Stuff like that goes on. And when it all breaks, and I use the boycotts as my grounding backup for that. Because when you boycott something, right? If you notice, the left has never been able to successfully boycott anything. They've threatened and had some people back down before they had to boycott, but they've never actually successfully boycotted anything. They just talk a lot of noise, make it sound like, get someone to go after them with 10 million followers, even though 9.9 million of their followers are bots. And the remaining 100,000 signed up because they had 9 million followers. And they'll have these people go and scare the crap out of a CEO. But in the end, has there ever been an example of doing what we just did to Bud Light or Target? Like what I see out there is Chick-fil-A, they were getting attacked by the left. And I know now everybody, I get that. But back in the day, they were getting attacked by the left. And what happened? They ended up booming in sales. Because these people don't exist. These people do not exist. I don't even think, usually with mass formation, it's about 30% of whatever base. In this case, we're talking the country, right? So you're talking about 30% of the people in the mass formation that actually, buy into all this garbage. That leaves 70% of the population in good standing. And I don't even think they've made it to 30, Mern. I don't even think they're at 30. So when you push someone off the subway in front of a train, morality is missing. Yeah, in that person, I agree. There's definitely some mentally ill people walking the streets right now. But again, that's a part of the messaging, right? The chaos that you see in the streets of places like New York and LA and San Francisco, that's all by design. These people should be in mental health facilities. I know why they closed them. I know what their excuse was. And maybe the conditions in those days were not good. But the answer to that is not close them. The answer to that is make them better conditions. People need help, but that's not what the left wants. The left wants chaos. They want these people in the streets. Stop calling them homeless. They're vagrant and mentally ill. They're not homeless. Homeless implies that they want a home. They don't want a home. These people do not want homes. And these are the people who are pushing people onto subway tracks and whatever. So, I mean, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. I don't want to beat it up too much, right? But at the same time, it's like, I honestly, I believe they don't exist. And I'll stand by that forever. I'll stand by until someone can show me that they do, right? Until someone can show me that they do. In mass, I'm talking about. They can get together a couple hundred of them, if they really work at it, they can get together a couple hundred. But they ain't filling up an arena with these people. Like they couldn't do that because they don't exist, because bots don't buy tickets. That's why. Bots don't buy chicken. Bots don't buy Bud Light. Why couldn't they counter the boycott? Because they don't exist. You're talking about a group, transgenders are 0.0006% of the population? It doesn't make them worth more or less. It's just a point that they don't exist. Not statistically, they're insignificant. It's like catering, trying to judge characteristics like, a ginger with green eyes and blue freckles. How many of those exist? This is my point. These people don't really exist. We all get caught up in it, but they ain't there. I see your point. I like to think America's a good place, but I must be on guard. Yeah, be on guard. I'm not saying put your guard down, because the Looney Tunes are still out there, right? These George Soros DAs are still releasing everybody under the sun. They don't give a damn who gets hurt. They don't give a damn about anything. And you're absolutely right. That's why COS is so important, getting people back together and taking a stand. I'm telling you, folks, there's a laundry list of reasons why COS is important, why convention of states matters, and why it's important that you believe that it matters and that you get together with your common folk and your people in your neighborhood, because it's designed to be run locally. The nation is not designed to be run from the federal government. It is a child of the states. It is not the other way around. The states are the parent. And that drills the states are governed locally. There is no above level government in this country that's going to trump when push comes to shove. Now, normally they work things out, but when push comes to shove, it's the locality who's going to win the day. The state or the federal government can threaten money. They can threaten with this and that. But if the answer is no from the lower level, the answer remains no. Right now in California, there's a district in Temecula they're being fined, and they're flipping the bird to Gavin Newsom because they voted on their own to not allow all this gender madness crap going on in their school. He sent them a bunch of books, a bunch of, I don't know which books specifically they were, but I'm sure it was more of that pornographic kiddie porn stuff. Tried to pump it to their school. They won't take it. They won't take it, and he demanded it, and they said no. They had another district. The state sent their head of DEI down there, and they let him speak like anyone else can speak, and then cut him off at his 2 minutes like everyone else gets cut off, and sent him on his way. Like the localities run the show. Okay, no one's getting arrested for telling the government above them to go F themselves. This is the way that the United States is designed to work. That's the reason anyone would even honor the idea, the concept of something like nullification. Because and some good points were made about why nullification is should not be a thing. But the point is, at any point in the game, a state can tell the federal government to go F off. It's done it all the time. It's happened throughout history regularly. And they just work it out, because if the state don't want to do it, they ain't going to do it. That's what it comes down to. And in most cases, they just work it out. In the cases that they don't, the state just doesn't do it. And you can name any litany of issues. I mean, marijuana is a popular one right now. How many states have legalized that? There's only so much, there's still free, and like I said, it drills down even lower from state to local. Like, we need to take it back from the ground. That's where we take it back. That's where COS is taking it back from. That's where we take it back. All right. Now, that being said, I have gone well over what I was intending to do. My mother is here from New Jersey, so I am absolutely excited to spend some time with her. And I am very excited for you to go and sign the petition and get yourself registered so you get the notification, so you can see the August 4th simulation of Convention of States and see Civics in action. See Civics in action. Start a watch party. There's a place to register. You can do all of that. Just get down there. I'm not even telling you my website today. I'm just telling you to go straight to conventionofstates.com and handle business. Figure out where your state is. If you need help with that, you can do that on my website, thepatriotthinktank.com. I've got all the resolutions there. Who's in, who's out, all that. COS has it too. So just, educate yourself on this topic, folks, because it's coming, and you don't want to be the only one who doesn't know. On that note, I'll see you next week. I'm out.
And like that,